As promised, when I started my channel a couple of weeks ago, I said I would do a longer video about myself, my condition, and why I created my channel. So that's what today's video is all about. So for those people who don't know, I have asthma and I have had that since childhood. And for anyone who doesn't understand what asthma is, it's a long-term chronic lung condition and it can affect people in different ways. And it just depends on how severe you have it. So in short, it causes inflamed airways, which can cause things like coughing and wheezing, asthma attacks, just to name a few of the symptoms. And basically what happens is that in our airways from like our mouths, like all the way down, it goes into our lungs, and along the way there are little sort of tiny microscopic hairs which kind of helps the air through, helps any debris down or back up, whichever way it's supposed to be going. And the hairs are supposed to do like a Mexican wave. They're all supposed to move in unison as they would in a normal healthy person, but in someone with asthma, they're not doing the Mexican wave. They're doing some weird dance and no one's asking for directions, so no one's going in the right way, which obviously doesn't help. So yeah, it's not great, but it just depends how severe you have it. So for some people, they might be in and out of hospital their whole lives with it, and it can be fatal. And for other people, it's just mildly irritating and they barely know they've got it. So it really does vary. And for me, I was kind of the latter for a really, really long time. Had it as a child, as I said, didn't really impact my life, got on with life pretty much like any other kid. Occasionally got out of breath, occasionally got wheezy, and I take my inhalers. And I have had periods over the years on and off where I didn't have any medication at all. So yeah, it's been really variable. So fast forward to COVID. I know none of us like to talk about that. It's very triggering for a lot of people. And but yeah, that's kind of where things changed a little bit for me. I remember having COVID in the March, and whilst I was isolating was when the UK went into their lockdown. And I remember crying my heart out when that happened. But we're not here to talk about that. But yeah, I had COVID. I didn't know at the time if it definitely was. I just had all the symptoms because it was before we were doing testing over here. But later on, because of the work I was doing at that time, I was able to do an antibodies test, and that showed that I'd had COVID, so it's more than likely that I had it at that time when I was really unwell. And I had all the typical symptoms, so we've just kind of always assumed it was COVID. I had nothing to say it was anything else. But after that, my asthma was harder to manage, and I was getting flare-ups like pretty much not weekly, not that often. I was getting them sort of every 4 to 6 weeks, but I would bounce back from them quite quick. And then I moved jobs and it sort of suddenly stopped. And so I put it down to where I was working at that time. They were doing renovations, so I thought maybe it was just all the dust and like all the debris that they were doing was probably kicking out some nasty things that had been laid dormant for years, I don't know. But it did change, and obviously I was quite happy with that. So went on a health and wellness like kick. I was like eating really healthy, trying to lose some weight. I was trying to be really active. I remember having one flare up that year, which was 2023, and but I bounced back really quickly from it. And then it became the summer. I was working out. I was doing like boxercise, doing quite like active and vigorous workouts with that, and I felt really good about myself. I was like counting down to my 40th birthday. I did a photo shoot that year, like a woman empowerment thing. It was actually like really amazing. Had an amazing 40th birthday, thinking I was like fab and fit at 40, and then October comes And then Harrison brings home this awful, leggy, viral thing. You know, like when the kids go back to school and they're always bringing something gross back. Yeah, that year it was this viral infection. Everyone had it. It knocked everyone off their feet. And everyone else bounced back apart from me. That was great. But so basically it started this kind of catalyst for my asthma. It got worse. I never bounced back from that infection, like I say, and it's just been succession of chest infections and steroids. And for that kind of October to December, I felt like the longest time ever, because it was just constant symptoms, constantly feeling ill, out of breath doing the most simplest of tasks. I couldn't keep up with Harrison, couldn't keep up with Neil. Everything was just hard. I couldn't breathe properly. I couldn't sleep. I was just permanently exhausted, but then couldn't sleep because of my symptoms. And I just kept going back and forth to the doctors, and they were like, oh, just take these antibiotics, just take these steroids. And this went on for weeks and weeks. I had at least 2 visits to A&E that time period that I can remember of. I remember just sitting on my bathroom floor and was like, I can't breathe, I need to go. And usually when I've gone to A&E, it's because I've been told to go by someone like 111. But this time I was like, no, I need to go. And the thing is, I'm a nurse, and I've been a nurse a long time, so I know how to manage my condition, and I can manage it myself really well at home. But every now and then there's this time where I think, no, I need the professionals. I need the department. I need the A&E department. Yeah. So yeah. And it was things like walking across the room, walking up the stairs, trying to cook dinner. All these really, really simple things were just becoming so much harder. And this kept going on and on for weeks. And then in the end, I saw an out of hours GP. I think I'd called 111. I was really struggling to breathe, and they said go to A&E. And then at our local A&E, they kind of do like a mini triage at the door, and if you don't need A&E, they'll send you across the road to like this out of hours service. It's really effective. It's really good. Sounds weird, but it works. So I went there. We sat there for a while because it's always a long wait in there, just as bad as A&E, to be fair. But I saw a doctor in there, and he was like, this isn't right. You've had far too much steroids. And that was just between October and December. So he was like, you need to see a specialist. So he wrote to my GP, and it kind of went from there. But then I got my letter in the early January. Had a horrendous Christmas with loads of asthma attacks. So Christmas is massive for me. I mean, it is for most people, but I love it. I love it so much. And I do so much baking normally, or I used to, not anymore, because that Christmas I had so many asthma attacks just from cooking and baking and doing all the things I normally did. And it broke my heart that I couldn't do it this year. But I learnt my lesson from the year before. But anyway, I'm digressing. So yeah, he sent this letter to my GP saying she needs to see a respiratory specialist. And so the GP wrote the letter, and I managed to get an open referral so that I could get seen privately, because I have healthcare insurance through work, and the waiting list was 11 months. That's just crazy. I don't know where I would have been in that time space, how much worse I would have got if I hadn't had that private healthcare, because it meant I got to be seen by the same doctor that I'd been referred to on the NHS much sooner. And then they was able to start medications, and we added things in, we changed inhalers, we tweaked things as we went along, and then it got me stable to the point where I didn't need to be seeing him every 4 weeks. And then I was just to wait for the to see him on the NHS. And then in between that time, I had pulmonary rehab, which is physiotherapy for breathing and exercises to help with that. And I felt quite good at the beginning of the summer, but then things changed, as they always do. And then my flare-ups were getting more often. I think in the span of about a year, I had, on average, I think it was about 12 courses of steroids, which is way, way, way over what is recommended. So then my asthma had become steroid dependent, and it was causing me to have like what they class as a moon face. So my face was getting quite rounded and bloated, and like all round down here was getting like really like deep, like my cheeks were like hamster cheeks. So now they don't want to give me steroids at all. So my face has gone down, luckily, but my asthma ain't feeling great. So yeah, just carrying on. So I was seen by the specialist, and then so now I've been referred to another specialist, so it's more waiting. I've had like a few tests, like they do spirometry tests, like lung function tests, CT scans, that kind of thing, just to rule anything else out. And they've all been like promising in terms of asthma, in terms that it hasn't shown anything else. So I wasn't deemed to have anything like COPD or emphysema, which is always good. But it didn't explain why I have so many flare-ups with my asthma, and why I've never got over that viral infection. But touch wood, I've not needed any steroids for quite a while now, and haven't had antibiotics, I don't think, since September. So I'm having a good run, and so I'm just kind of making the most of that. But there's had to be a lot of adjustments. I've had to get used to the fact that I am not the person I was just over a year ago now. It feels a lot longer, but yeah, I can't do those things that I used to do. I can't keep up with Harrison like I used to. I can't keep up with those day-to-day tasks without there being some comeback in terms of fatigue or more asthma symptoms. So just those daily tasks that most of us take for granted, and we've all done it at some point. I don't care what anyone says. We've all done it. We've all taken, the fact you just jump in the shower, or, run a hoover around the house, stand and bake a really long cake, or, cook an elaborate meal. Those are the things we all take for granted. And I kind of miss doing those things and not having to think about like, how much energy have I got today? What have I got? What's the essential things that need doing today? And what have I got energy for? That is kind of what I would class as extra. And most days, especially sort of Monday to Friday, it is getting myself up and dressed, getting Harrison to school, and getting through the work day, and anything else is probably out of my reach on most days. So yeah, it's fun. So I'm going to do some videos about how I have learnt to adapt to having to use things like mobility aids, and I would want to do a video about managing things like pacing and learning to listen to your body, and how to avoid things like boom and bust, to kind of prevent crashes. I really want to go into more detail into my Wheezy bag, because I think that is a lifesaver for us. And yeah, I popped a video up today about top tips about keeping warm. So I'd love to go into a bit more detail in that. But do check that one out. And yeah, if you have any tips for me as a new person in this sort of chronic illness realm or era, please let me know what works for you. And if you have anything you want me to cover, please let me know that too. Or if you just have any comments, questions, just drop them in the comments and I will address them. So yeah, I'm going to stop waffling now, and I'll see you soon.